What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. In today's news, Dustin Poirier reacts to Islam Makhachev call-out. Islam Makhachev recently stated in an interview with MMA Junkie that he would like to face Dustin Poirier next, although he was quick to assert that the Diamond does not deserve the title shot over higher-ranked fighters like Charles Oliveira and Justin Gaethje. Oliveira and Gaethje are both booked to fight at UFC 300 next month against Arman Tsarukyan and Max Holloway respectively, and Makhachev feels that it's simply a matter of timing and that Poirier is the next best available opponent. The champion has not been seen in action since he knocked out Alexander Volkanovski in October and is hungry to get back in the octagon and defend his belt. Speaking to USA Today's Sports' Mackenzie Salmon, Poirier seemed unfazed by Makhachev's opinion that he's undeserving of a title opportunity.
I mean, that's on him. I've done more in the sport of mixed martial arts than he has. I've been around a long time. I was doing this before it was cool, and I'm still here. I'm still here doing it at the highest level. I could beat anybody in the world, and I hope he's next.
Dustin made his 30th appearance in the octagon last month at UFC 299 when he finished rising French prospect Benoit Saint-Denis in the second round of their co-main event. He's now tied for the most knockout wins in UFC history and has the best win ratio of any fighter to reach the 30-fight milestone within the promotion. He captured the UFC interim title when he beat Max Holloway at UFC 236 in 2019, but came up short on both occasions he challenged for the unified championship against Khabib Nurmagomedov and Charles Oliveira. At 35 years old, he now has his eyes on one more attempt at that belt.
100%, that's what I want. That's if I could pick a fight, the title fight that's my choice. That's what I want.
Let's talk about the reigning bantamweight champion next. Sean O'Malley will be a bigger star than Conor McGregor. After successfully defending his crown at UFC 299 last month with a dominant victory over Marlon Vera, Sean O'Malley has his eyes firmly set on reaching the highest possible peak of superstardom within the sport. Sugar stated this week in an interview with Michael Bisping that his long-term goal is to become even bigger than Conor McGregor.
Since before I even got to this, I'm going to be bigger than Conor. People think that's a stab at Conor from me, but it's nothing. I'm probably the biggest Conor fan. It's just a good goal metric of where I want to be, and that's bigger than Conor. And I'm on my way, but I'm really not even that close yet. When you talk about how many pay-per-views he's done, top 10, he's like 7 out of the top 10. Like, I'm not even close there. I'm closer than I was, a year ago, 2 years ago, last week, but I'm not really there yet. So I just use that bigger than Conor as a crazy metric of where I want to be.
O'Malley arrived in the UFC back in 2017, off the back of an impressive knockout win on Dana White's Contender Series. A string of impressive striking displays and devastating finishes helped push him into the title picture. And over his past 3 fights, he has really stepped up a level in competition, but has continued to make it look easy as he dispatched the former champion Peter Yan before claiming the title with a knockout win over Aljamain Sterling. His victory over Chito Vera was his first title defense, and it seems likely that he will face Merab Dvalishvili next, although the possibility of a super fight with featherweight champion Ilia Topuria cannot be ruled out. With McGregor having held 2 titles in 2 weight classes simultaneously, also being involved in 7 of the top 10 pay-per-view cards in combat sports history, it seems Sugar is setting his sights as high as possible. Back to the lightweight division. Max Holloway breaks silence on UFC 300 fight. While Alexander Volkanovski was racking up title defenses at 145 pounds, former featherweight champion Max Holloway seemed to find himself in the role of perennial gatekeeper. After losing to the Australian 3 times between 2019 and 2022, it looked like the only way Holloway would find himself back in contention for the belt was if somebody else could come in and steal the title. When Ilia Topuria eventually did just that at UFC 298 in February, it happened just weeks after the announcement came from Dana White that Max was moving up to lightweight to take on Justin Gaethje for the BMF belt. Holloway has opened up on his YouTube channel, explaining his decision to take a fight in another weight class right before Topuria stepped in to challenge Volkanovski.
I thought this whole time in my mind that if Topuria was to beat Volk in any way, Volk gets a direct rematch. Volk did enough work to earn himself a direct rematch, and everybody's like, oh yeah, but after the knockout and blah blah, Volk stood earns it. He did what he did. He has a bunch of title defensive. Just because he went up to a weight class and lost, I don't think it should affect him at his own weight class.
Holloway pointed out that he doesn't believe in sitting and waiting for an opportunity.
That was kind of mind-blowing, but everybody keeps saying this and that. You wait in this sport, the sport goes by you.
Blessed has appeared in the lightweight division once before, stepping up to face Dustin Poirier for the interim belt in 2019 while he was still the featherweight champ. He was unsuccessful in that attempt and returned to 145 pounds, and while he lost 3 times to Volkanovski since then, no other fighter has managed to defeat him at featherweight since his return. He blames his preparations for his previous loss at 155 pounds, stating that he didn't build his body correctly to deal with larger, stronger opponents over 5 rounds, but has been working diligently behind the scenes this time around to ensure that he turns up at UFC 300 better physically prepared for a war with Justin Gaethje. Moving now to the welterweight division, Ian Garry shuts down UFC fight. Ian Garry doesn't seem too enthusiastic about the prospects of facing former Bellator striking sensation Michael Venom Page in his next fight. MVP appeared on the MMA Hour last week and floated the idea of possibly fighting the Irishman next, but Garry told Sky Sports that he has his sights set a little higher up the rankings.
No, he's not. His number's not higher than mine. I want to be the best in the world, and unless your number's higher than mine, I'm not interested.
MVP made his first UFC appearance recently at UFC 299 and put on a striking masterclass against Kevin Holland. The victory sees him slot straight into the welterweight rankings at number 13, 6 places behind Garry, who's moved up to 7th following his win over Jeff Neal in February. Garry has been involved in a public back and forth with former title challenger Colby Covington and seems uninterested in looking down the rankings.
Unless he passes me out of the division somehow and his number's higher than mine, 0 interest.
Garry had initially picked Kevin Holland to beat MVP going into UFC 299, but is pleased the Brit managed to get his hand raised.
I'm glad he punched him out off Kevin Holland. That guy talks a lot of smack as well, and that just proves that he's not good enough to be in the top 10.
Did he surprise you?
I'll own up to that. I did. Yeah. I said I don't think he beats him, but yeah, he surprised me. Well done. Kevin Holland looked terrible.
It remains to be seen who MVP will face next. Next, let's take a look at MMA Community goes off on Dana White for interview. In a startling revelation during his recent appearance on Pound for Pound with Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo, Dana White revealed that he and his wife moved the date of his son's birth to work around a UFC event. White said that they scheduled his wife for a C-section so that he wouldn't have to miss out on watching a Chuck Liddell fight.
My son Aiden, his due date was Chuck Liddell versus somebody. I moved the date of his birth for the Chuck Liddell fight. Yeah, I said, yeah, that ain't gonna work. We got a big fight coming up. So my wife had a C-section. We're gonna have to get him out of there early because that ain't gonna work for me.
Fans on social media seemed blown away by this news. One tweeted, Dana White said his son was supposed to be born on the day of a Chuck Liddell fight, so he made his wife get a C-section so he wouldn't miss it. That man is a maniac. Another fan made reference to his domestic abuse issues. Now I understand why his wife slapped him. Fans across the board seemed unsurprised. Nah, that's actually pretty garbage, but what do you expect from Dana? Dude's weird for that. I don't care what anyone says. Between the overwhelming negative reactions to this statement and also his assertion on the same interview that Kamaru Usman is the greatest welterweight of all time.
So when you talk about a Kamaru Usman who went through him twice, you might not like Kamaru. You might not like whatever it is you don't like about him, but you cannot deny that he's the greatest welterweight of all time.
It seems White's appearance on the podcast has certainly sparked some strong opinions within the MMA community. In other news, Cory Sandhagen talks about next UFC fight. Bantamweight contender Cory Sandhagen seems to be the odd man out when it comes to the 135-pound title discussion. After Sean O'Malley successfully defended his belt against Marlon Vera recently, he called out featherweight champ Ilia Topuria in his post-fight interview. That prompted a backlash from fans and led to calls for #1 contender Merab Dvalishvili to get the next shot. This debate seemed to completely ignore the claims of Sandman, even though he sits 3rd in the rankings behind Dvalishvili and former champ Aljamain Sterling, who's right now otherwise preoccupied with a featherweight fight at UFC 300 against Calvin Kattar. During an appearance on Daniel Cormier's YouTube channel, DC floated the idea that a fight against Umar Nurmagomedov should be next for Sandhagen, and that the winner would be next in line for a crack at the belt. Sandhagen reiterated that he'd be happy to fight anybody, as long as it gets him back in the title picture.
I keep telling the UFC that if they tell me to fight John Jones or if they tell me to fight Yuri, if they tell me to fight whoever it is that they tell me to fight next so that I get a title shot afterwards, I'm okay with it. I'm going to say yes.
Since a decision loss to Peter Yan in October 2021, Sandhagen has won 3 straight at 135 pounds, including a victory over recent title challenger Marlon Chito Vera. His last bout was a win over Rob Font last August, during which he tore his tricep early in the fight. The lack of entertainment as he controlled Font over 5 rounds seemed to have pushed him back down the ladder. But a victory over a dangerous rising star like Umar Nurmagomedov would surely open up some championship opportunities for Sandman. Next, let's take a look at Colby Covington breaks down Ian Garry beef. The ongoing drama between Colby Covington and Ian Garry seems to be never ending. After Garry called out chaos during his post-fight interview at UFC 298, the self-proclaimed King of Miami launched an attack on Garry and his wife Layla via social media last month. Covington stated he would only agree to fight Garry if the Irishman agreed to a variety of stipulations. There have been video responses shared back and forth between the two online in the last few weeks, yet we seem no closer to finding out if the fight will actually go ahead or not. During an appearance on Saucecast with Adam Sosnick, Covington refused to say if he wanted to fight Machado Garry or not. He stated that he hopes to fight on International Fight Week, but pointed out that he gets paid the same regardless of who he fights, so he has no need to chase a matchup with Garry or anyone else.
It's always big cities and bright lights every time I fight. I'm always on the top of the marquee, so when I fight next, it'll be a big pay-per-view blockbuster. So I think that the biggest show that the UFC does is it's called International Fight Week. That's their big Mecca show where they do a sporting experience, and it's like an event thing that they do together for the fans to get them excited, followed by this massive pay-per-view fight. So, I'm hoping that I'll fight International Fight Week. Doesn't matter who I fight. I told him, if he wants to do these 3 stipulations, we can fight.
Yeah. Wow.
But if he doesn't, I got to move up in the rankings. I'm not trying to go behind me,
Machado Garry has steadily been rising through the ranks since he first appeared in the octagon back in late 2021. He has now taken out 3 consecutive ranked opponents in Daniel Rodriguez, Neil Magny, and Jeff Neal, and finds himself at number 7 in the welterweight division. With Conor McGregor rumored to be facing Michael Chandler during International Fight Week, it would appear that the timing could be right to give both fighters the thing they crave the most, the co-main event slot of a massive pay-per-view card. Joe Rogan demands a UFC rule change. On a recent episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, Joe said that he believes all knees, including knees to a downed opponent, should be legal. Here's what Joe had to say.
This is my thing. I think not only should it be legal, I think all knees on the ground should be legal, 100%. I think knees to a grounded opponent to the head should be legal. The only problem with that is the cage. It's the only problem because you can't move your head out of the way. If someone's got your head pinned against the cage and they knee you in the face, that's disastrous.
Yeah.
But every other place, I feel like you should be able to knee somebody in the head. On top, on the bottom, it would stop stalling. It would stop people like hanging out in the turtle position. You wouldn't be able to. There's a lot of reasons to stop. You should have knees on the ground. So I think what he did 100% should be legal. If you're on your back and a guy's on top of you, you can knee him in the head. That should be legal.
Top comments. Mighty Mouse is definitely a top foe of the UFC. If Michael Chandler actually fights Conor this summer, I'll donate my entire salary to charity. Pereira gonna give Jamal some sweet dreams. Judges won't be needed because Alex will put Hill to sleep, just like Aljo did. Make sure to leave a comment and you might get featured in our next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to never miss any MMA news. Check out our video from yesterday if you missed it. See you tomorrow.